AI is all over the place. We are specifically in this year bombarded by tons of AI advancements that are unparalleled. We haven't seen anything like this exponential growth in AI applications and its capabilities that happen so fast, even to the practitioners themselves. They are amazed by both the advancement but also the adoption of the technology. So people started to use AI really fast, and they get used to it, which is amazing. So AI, in my point of view, it brings both opportunity but also a challenge. It's a fundamental change to the way we use tools. So since the beginning of history even, we have been inventing tools that we have complete control over. So we've invented like a hammer that we hold in our hand. We have the intention of what to do with it, and we control exactly how we will use it. Even the computers in their non-AI shape is like this. We have the intention of what we want to achieve, and we have control over the exact steps we will take to achieve the result we want. AI introduced a fundamental change to this relationship. So right now we have a tool that in order to use or to get the benefit from it, you have to leave the driving wheel a little bit. Yes, you decide what you want to do, but you don't have a 100% control on how it's operating. So for example, in the current very popular now generative AI applications, you enter a prompt, but you don't have a control over how the machine will or the algorithm will interpret that prompt and how it will respond to it. So it all happens in the background, and the machine takes basically decisions on behalf of you. I think one of the most clear examples of how powerful this experience can be and how both magical but also can be a little bit intimidating is the autonomous driving vehicles or cars. They are starting to pick up. They are not everywhere, but there are examples of them running either partially part of the trip or a complete trip. I don't know how many of our viewers and listeners have tried this. I myself have tried once to ride in an autonomous car, and it's a very scary experience. We are used to be in control, to have the driving wheel. If you're driving, you control everything and you feel that it's your decisions that matter, your understanding of the world around you, and your safety is kind of your responsibility. But once you are in an autonomous driving car, you need to take a step back and give the control to the machine. And the machine is under the hood. You don't know why it's taking a turn now, or why did it slow down, or why it's decided to go faster in a specific part of the road. And it's kind of, specifically in the beginning, it's kind of uncomfortable at least. So the idea of the talk or this session is basically how can we design our AI experience? If I am designing an AI product or service, how can I make this less uncomfortable? How can I make the users trusting the AI, the machine, the algorithm more, and make their experience much more smoother? Part of it, definitely big part of it, is the usability, just like we make any other application or product or service, human-centric, easy for the people to use. But I think our role at this moment of the development of the AI technology is super crucial because it's in the very beginning, it's in infancy stage. So we can affect this technology. We can set the standards of how the technology will run in the future. So if we made sure that people are well considered, that it's human-centered enough, our AI application, that will become the bar for them, hopefully. And then we can shape our future into less scary future working with AI. I myself, I've been started working with now on AI applications since 2018. The first time I did this was during my time working at Ericsson, the network provider, network company. Just like many other companies nowadays, they are thinking of more automating and involving AI in their workflows. So they were aspiring, and I think they are still aspiring to something called zero network, which is basically a network that have a zero human touch. It's operating and it's orchestrating the mobile network parts completely autonomous. When I started working on my first AI task, I just realized that we need more than the normal standard UX activities. Yes, you are designing for usability. Yes, you want everything to be understandable. And yes, you want to involve the heuristics of UX that we all are familiar with. But on top of that, it's the factor that we just talked about, the factor that it involves people taking this step back and the need to design for trust. That's basically the whole idea. How do we design a system that is, yes, usable, but also foster trust? Because if the AI is not in a stage that it's completely run by itself, this is what is called general AI or even super AI, which are not the current reality that we live in. The type of AI that we have today is called narrow AI. It's basically a technology that can become closer or even sometimes better than human performance, but in one single aspect or area. Which means that if it's not like human, it's not capable enough to replace a complete job. For example, it can replace us in one task or two tasks, or a very simple job that doesn't require anything more than one or two tasks. But for more complicated tasks and jobs that we do every day, we still need to work with this technology. We still need to make partnership with this technology. I think one of the most things that we hear today is that AI will not replace your job. What will replace you is someone who uses AI. And that's currently, who knows what will happen in the future, but currently very true to a very big extent. The AI doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't take control of everything. We don't expect it to run completely autonomous. I think the word autonomous itself implies this, that the AI is run for its own, on its own, which in its current stage, it's not completely right. I think a better word is introduced by a writer, the Christopher Nossel, in his book, Designing Agentive Technology, and that's the word agentive. We can think of these new AI products and applications as our agents or our assistants, so to speak. We ask them to do a specific task and then we evaluate the outcome of it. Just like we use ChatGPT today. We decide that I want to summarize this paragraph. I don't want to extend it. I want to summarize it. So the intent comes from us. And then the machine or the algorithm will process it, summarize it, try to achieve what I wanted. And then the user will look again at the result and evaluate it and either accept it or they are not happy with it and they want to change it. So this human AI relationship is super crucial. So during my work on the zero network or like autonomous network kind of project, I realized that the engineers that are working on managing these networks are people just like user experience designers. They are people with great experience. They have pride in what they do. They have insights that might not even be available to the machine. So when the machine says, for example, in order to make the network in this area of New York better in downloading Facebook images by 4%. So to increase the quality of downloading images in a specific application, in a specific area, we need to take these actions. We will need to change these batteries. We will need to update this software. That's how the autonomous network application was basically about, to make suggestions to increase and maintain high performance of the networks. I realized doing the user research and the user interviews that the network engineers themselves are not ready to give the whole control to the machine. They still will appreciate that they start with an intention. They say, yes, we want to increase the Facebook image download in this area by 4%, but they will need to understand the recommendations of the system. They will need to understand why the system suggests these specific suggestions, and how can I even change it? If I think that there is something missing in the judgment of the algorithm, how can I intervene and take control and so on? So that's where the idea came from, to kind of try to build a framework or a guideline on how to design for AI. I co-developed and authored this framework for Ericsson, and it is published as UX for AI. I think that's the official name in the end. But it's not the only company that have done this. Tons of other companies, Google, Microsoft, IBM, many other companies have developed their own guidelines and framework on how to design for AI. That shows us how important this topic is. And when you look at these different frameworks, you will find many similarities because they are approaching the same topic. Yes, every company, maybe some companies are consumer facing, others are enterprise or B2B. So yes, you will find a little bit of differences, but the core thing is not that much different. It's about instilling trust. It's about giving people control. Hi, I'm Ahmed, and this is my design story. We as humans, we are not good at trusting other machines. Because again, this haven't happened in the past. We have full control over the machines. So we would judge if this machine is good for this task or not, but we won't trust it in the exact same way that we trust other people to do something for us or to deal with them. So we are very good at trusting other people and maybe systems and organizations. But when it comes to a machine or algorithm, it's something new to us. So the main idea behind this framework is to try to replicate the same trust mechanism, so to speak, or trust system that we use to trust other people, and try to replicate this in our relationship with AI. So again, it can be done in many different ways, but one of the best ways that I think are easy to understand and easy to remember and easy to follow is to think of how we trust other people, for example, into two main categories. There is the cognitive trust, which is basically come from the brain, come from the mind. So let's say I, as a designer or a UX practitioner, I will have a junior in my team. There is the cognitive part of it. I will look at the resume. I will talk with them to understand how do they handle tasks. I may ask them some questions. I may give them a task and then see how they handle it. So I will try to evaluate their skills, their reliability, their accomplishment. And it's basically coming from the brain, coming from the head. The other part is the affective trust, which is a little bit more fluffy or like a little bit more soft. Whether we know it or not, whether we notice it or not, when we trust other people, we basically evaluate how much we like them. Their appearance, it doesn't have to be like something fancy, but we judge even the tone of voice, their body language, the choice of the words. This type of trust, even when we don't think about it, it happens, and it kind of comes from the heart, not the head. And they go hand in hand, and they go even, again, unnoticeably, but they happen, the cognitive and the affective part of it. Let's start with the cognitive part, the part that comes from the mind. I think one way to think about it is the timeline of creating or the timeline of interacting with the task. So let's say we have a system for UX designers, and instead of hiring a junior, this system kind of looks at the user research that we have done and kind of summarize it into insights and even give us recommendations for the solution or the user journey. So let's say we are designing this type of AI. We can think of our users, our UX designers and researchers who will use this AI application, and we can try to think of the timeline of the task itself. So before they start the task of getting the recommendations and so on, we will need to set the expectations. We will need to explain how can they use the systems, what are the limitations of the system. Everyone have their own assumptions on what AI can do or cannot do. I think media have played a role in this, in making us think or believe that AI is magical, can do everything, and it can do it without mistake. So I think it's a very important point to set the user's expectations in the beginning, to kind of onboard them on the experience, show them the capabilities and limitation of the system, even if it's one screen, maybe one illustration, a little bit of text, but it will help users understand what this system can and cannot do. This is vital for the trust, so we can avoid a frustration that happened from a misaligned expectation, basically. The second thing that we can do before the user start is triability. Usually, and till now, most of our AI applications will be doing something novel, something that users haven't tried before. And to give them an opportunity to try, to take a small task and do it quickly and see the output of the system, it's kind of a continuation of setting the expectation by telling it. Now we are showing them, we're giving them a sense, a glimpse of how the task flow will look like, what type of responses or predictions or output from the AI system that you will get. All this contribute to make the users feel that they are still in control, that it's not kind of a black box that I put an input and then it's a box of chocolate, I can open it, I can basically find anything. The third point under the before the task section of creating a smooth user experience for AI is to be very clear and transparent when it comes to topics like privacy, security, what permissions are being used. In order for AI to work, it might require a little bit of permissions. It might need to read a specific type of data. It might need to do something that is will kind of require privacy consent. And the earlier you can show and make this clear and take the permissions from the users, the more definitely that they will trust this AI. So all of this is basically before the user start doing the actual task. Now it's time to talk about what about during the task itself. So getting back to our example, if we talk about the system for UX designers that read the user research and kind of get back to us with the final insights and even suggestions for the solutions that should meet this user needs. So now the users know the limitations of such a system, and they are ready to start their first task. So they will, let's say, upload the document of the UX research. Now, there are two important things that we need to take care of when we're designing an AI experience. There is the explainability part, and then there is the controllability part. We will talk about each one of them in details. We need to design a system that is able to explain why it took a specific decision or why it came up with a specific prediction to the user. So this is super crucial. We as humans, that's similar to the way we work with others. We would like to understand the reasons. We would like to understand the basis of their judgment. So in our example, explainability might give the user the number of people who said that they want this feature. How do we parse the text, and how the system gives way to specific words over others, or specific sentences over other. It shows the user that the system have a reasoning behind its decision, that it's either like my at the same bar of my judgment, or even better. This is a crucial part of the whole experience. Getting back to the example of the autonomous car, think about it if the car have taken a different route, for example, but without giving the user any notification why it did take this decision. Or in a specific street, it suddenly goes very slow without giving the user any context or any reason behind this decision. The user might not feel comfortable. They might feel that the machine, the car, or the algorithm is not performing accordingly. Explanations or explainability helps the user to kind of cognitively trust the machine. It's easier said than done. Working on a real examples showed me that there is a common problem or like a challenge in AI that is called black box problem. Basically, that even the creators of the algorithms don't 100% of the time know how the decisions or the recommendations of a specific system is taken. In my experience, I found that working very closely with the machine learning engineers and the data scientists can give us at least a glimpse, can give us at least general guidelines on how the system take these decisions, and showing even as much as we can, even if it's too little, it's always better than nothing. So giving the user a place and a way to look under the hood and see how these decisions were taken is crucial to a proper AI experience. Of course, again, it's a scale. So not all the tasks users will be interested in knowing the decisions behind it. Like, let's say it's a very simple task like an automatic opening and closing door. Users are not interested in knowing this. So according to the type of task, the designer should evaluate how much information should be exposed. By controllability, we mean that the user is able to intervene and control and take the driving wheel and say, I like where it's going, for example, but I don't want you to do this or that. So the user will have controls that allow them to be able to control the final result of the AI. For example, let's say in our example of the user research system that will understand the user research and summarize it for the UX designer, the user might have some preferences. So they will tell the system to ignore a specific part of the conversation from this minute to that minute. Or, for example, give more weight to some features over the others asked by the users because they are within the scope or the business need or the current budget or something like this. So we do this when we work. We have our own limitations and we have our own points of view that we want to add to the formula. So think of them as preferences that you want to tell your AI system to take care of. One of the recent examples that I've seen this specific concept have been applied is in the very popular text-to-image application, Midjourney. So Midjourney is started as a Discord bot where you basically type something and you press enter and you get results. And then you either like the images that are generated or not. What you can do is you can write again and regenerate again, but you don't have control on what to avoid or what to do, or like what to do with the result, how you can work on the results. Recently, I have used it and I noticed they added, after you are shown the image results, there are buttons underneath that they give you a little bit of control. For example, you can zoom in the picture, you can zoom out, and then the AI will kind of continue the missing parts. You can pan, so move the image a little bit, and also the AI will recreate the missing parts. You can make changes either subtle or strong according to how you like the picture and so on. So this controllability part, I think, is very, very important. Without it, we will basically be, we will feel helpless. We will feel that we have to accept what the algorithm or the machine gave us, or start from all over, which is not a proper experience. We're still talking about the cognitive part of the trust. And the last part that I want to talk about is what to take care of after the task. So now the system have given its recommendations and the users accepted it, or the decisions of the system and the user have accepted it or have edited, and now they have finished the task. There are two very important things that we can design for. One of them is to design for showing the efficiency of the results. Just like when you have someone working for you and they will, after a period of time, they will prepare a report on what they did in the previous period and how efficient it was, what was the outcome of it. So some type of demonstration of the results is very important. This can be done in many ways. It can be done in data visualization. It can be done in simple text. But it's very important to show the benefit, to show the user of the benefit of relying on my AI product or service versus doing it themselves. For example, we can talk about how many hours saved. We can talk about how the improvement in the results in one measure or another. The other thing that we also can focus on is to show the users. Remember, we talked during the task that users can have a little bit of control, basically telling the system their preferences. If those preferences are general, are not like specific to the task that they were applying, and it's something that the users would like the AI to take care of going forward, it's very good to show the user that these preferences were taken into consideration. So let's say that a user said to the AI system, always give me only 3 insights out of the users. I only want the top 3 insights. Let's say the next time, that the task, after the task is done, and the next time user is using the system again, we can mention very briefly that we are only showing the 3 top results because that was your preference. So it shows the user that the AI system is cooperating, that it's responding to my preference that that the user have expressed at some point of the task. Basically, this is all about the cognitive trust. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. There can be many other things that give users signals that increase their cognitive trust, but those are some of the most important aspects of it. As we said, this is kind of the more emotional part of the equation. The first one was cognitive, was about facts, like performance, how the system is performing, how it's taking care of my feedback. This part is more about the emotions, how the users feel when they use the AI system. The two things that basically contribute to this. When we talk about human to human trust, we look at the body language, we look at how the people look, and we listen to their tone of voice and their choice of words. And to mimic this in a human AI relationship, we talk about visuals and we talk about the UX writing or the voice design. So when it comes to visual, we can use visual elements like colors, icons, and other visual elements, layouts that makes it easier for the user to trust the system. Definitely there are the whole psychology of color part that we can delve into. Specific colors can convey specific emotions that might be relevant for the task. Social networks, for example, most of them, all of them, almost are using blue because it conveys trust, so people can feel comfortable sharing their own posts, images on them, and so on. But there are also other considerations. So maybe we can use colors that are specific to this profession or field that gives the feeling of professionality and so on. But most importantly, I think the usage of the visual elements like icons that shows a completion of a task, visual elements like progressing bars that shows makes user feel that the waiting time is faster, visual elements like data visualizations that makes the user understand complex information easier. So let's say, for example, we talked about explainability. I can write an essay about why the system took this decision, or I can put it in a nice data visualization that is easy to look at. This gives a perceived sense of smartness, that the system is smart. Although it might be the same written here and depicted in an image, but it gives, or a data visualization, but it gives the sense that the system is actually intelligent. I think the example that was fascinating for me, and maybe one of the very first examples that actually made me thought about reading more and educating myself more and working more on the human AI relationship, was this research that was done in, I think it was Harvard University. And it was a research on, I think it was in the 60s, on the 70s, a much less smarter system than what we have today, but it's basically a medical diagnosing system. So it's a system that you input the symptoms, the doctor basically input the symptoms, and the system will give them a diagnosis, a suggested diagnosis for these symptoms. And the research was about how doctors will trust this system. So they made two groups of doctors. One of them are using the system in a way that they enter the symptoms, they type the symptoms, and then the system will just give them the recommendations. Just like, let's say, ChatGPT or Midjourney work today. You just write what you want, and then we give you the recommendation. The other group of doctors were getting the recommendation in a slightly different way. So they would write the symptoms, and they would write their own diagnosis as well. And then the system will look at the symptoms and look at the diagnosis and say, yes, I think your diagnosis were good, or I disagree, maybe the diagnosis was different. Although it's not a big difference, but this is the tone of voice, this is the task flow, this is the expected behavior from another doctor. So if a doctor will go to another doctor and ask them for their feedback, that's the way they will do it. They will say, I've seen the symptoms, I think it's this diagnosis, what do you think? So when you think about it, there is no difference it's the same recommendation from the system, but it's presented in a way, in a tone of voice that sounds more like a doctor. It kind of understands the user. It talks to them in their language. And that makes all the difference. So whether it's using the right lingo, if it's an engineering, engineers, users speak their language, see how they would explain their decisions and speak the same language. Of course, also another important part is to use a humble tone of voice. The AI is basically about probabilities. It's not always 100% sure of the output that it's recommending. So being humble and use a language that this is the best up to my knowledge, or given the input, this is my output, it makes a whole difference, and it makes the users trust that the system is aware of the user need, but also its own capabilities and limitations. I think the points we talked about today about the cognitive trust and the affective trust, again, this is not an exhaustive list. It's tools that you can use and you can think about to make conscious decisions on how to make my AI product or service more trustable. I found that working with a similar frame, the frame we talked about, or even any other similar frame, at least gives you kind of a roadmap. Instead of jumping head start into designing an AI application or an AI system, and you don't have a clear guideline on when and how and what are my tools to instill trust, it can lead to a lot of confusion and a lot of overlooking important parts like explainability and controllability and so on. So in my experience, I think it gave me just as I was saying, a roadmap kind of like, or like a wide framework. That doesn't mean that in each and every project I was using this whole set of tools or the points that we talked about. It depends on the task, and it depends on the nature or the context of the task and the nature of the users, that you will pick the right tools and pick the most relevant ones to your task, basically. When I started to work on my first projects on AI, I think I kind of underestimated the affective part of the trust. I was focusing more on all the cognitive things like giving the user the controllability, the explainability, setting expectations, and so on, which is good. But I think the affective part is usually overlooked. It takes a lot of time. It's emotional. That's why it requires a little bit more of work. It depends on the UX writing. You need to collaborate with the UX writer. You need to rethink your visuals and the usage of the visuals in your system, and how each design decision can make the users trust your system more. So I think that was part that in the beginning I gave less importance to, but now I think it's an integral part of how I would do it. If you are starting on working on an AI product or service, there are some tips I might share. First of all, it's a team sport. Working very closely with the machine learning engineers or the data scientists are something that you can't do without. You need to work really closely with them, because in each point of what we mentioned, we don't have enough information. Like let's take an example. We want to set the user expectations of what is possible and what is not in the system. We agree that this is important to create trust. But for us to know what the system can or cannot do, we can't decide this on our own. We need to work closely with the algorithm builders, our machine learning engineers and data scientists. And when you talk with them, you will find that their work is very similar to us. They don't have a clear-cut answers. I always, in my experience, when you ask a user experience designer or a researcher something, they will say, it depends, and then they will talk and talk, because there is no definitive answer. It depends on the context. And it's very similar on the machine learning and data science world. When you talk with them, you will find that there are gray areas. Yeah, we can do this to some extent, but we cannot do this. So it needs a lot of collaboration and compromise to reach the result that you want. Another maybe advice is that AI is moving very fast. What was even considered artificial intelligence cutting edge when I started working on AI applications are now obsolete. New things happen, advancements happen, and I think we will always need to be updated to know not only the capabilities of what AI can and cannot do, but also how users perceive it. Because with time, people will get used to specific level of interaction with AI that doesn't require all the explanation and controllability. Sometimes we will get to a point that we trust an AI to do a specific task, and then you don't need to overdo it actually. So I think that's the main two tips that I can give for designing for AI. Keep yourself always updated. Work closely with machine learning and AI engineers and data scientists to have the best possible experience for your users. One way, of course, to evaluate after you have tried to include the points of what we talked about, of how to instill trust in a product or a service. And I think normally we would go for user testing. I think it shouldn't be the much quantitative user research, should be a qualitative one. You will need to hear from users what their experience was when they first use your application, when they first interact with it. If there are any areas that they feel that they lost control or that they feel that they are excluded, and what would be the recommendation, that should be, I think, the main evaluation criteria. But then also, again, I would evaluate the market in general, because AI is advancing very fast. So again, what was considered a task that requires a lot of effort for the user to trust might not be the case after a while. So autonomous cars, I think in the beginning, they will require a lot of this explanation, controllability. I believe that with time, such a technology, if it's efficient enough, people will trust it, and then they will be less interested in getting a lot of feedback and a lot of explainability of each simple decision. So it's both evaluation for your own task, but also evaluation for the whole AI market and how it's developing. And it's developing very fast. So yeah, we will need to keep an eye. One example of a system that I designed, and I've used the framework we just talked about. It was during my time at Ericsson, and it was the zero touch network that we were working on in Ericsson. Was basically trying to automate the network infrastructure and the orchestration of the network and how it works. Maybe some highlights of the things that respond to the talking points that we talked about was, for example, for the engineers to use this system, we needed to set their expectations. We needed to let them know what can and cannot be done. For example, one limitation of the system was that it's not updated with the news and so on. So engineers themselves, network engineers, when they work on a network, they take into consideration if there is a football game, for example, happening in one place, that means that there will be an overload on the mobile network that will require actions that are different than normal. The AI system that we were creating were not equipped to get this information, the up-to-date information. It was running with its own algorithm and pre-stored and pre-trained data. So this needed to be very clear to the engineers from the beginning that, let's say, that the engineers wanted to increase the performance of a specific area in the city at this time of the day, they know information that the system might not know. So for this to happen, we needed in the beginning on the onboarding to let the users, the engineers know what the system can and cannot do. Another highlight from that project, I think it was about the explainability. So explainability is again easier said than done, because it's usually not clear even to the algorithm's creator how the systems take decisions. So what I did was I worked very closely with our data scientists and talking with them about the algorithm itself and how can we give a glimpse to the users on the decisions that the system is taking. They introduced me with an overwhelming flow chart. It's hundreds of points of how the system evaluate each part of its decision. And of course, yes, this is explainable, but it's not humanly easily understood. It's a machine thing that the machine can understand. So I worked very hard with them into summarizing this big flow chart into a simplified version of it that focus on the main points that will make the engineers understand why this decision was taken. So it requires a little bit of back and forth and reworking on the data to make it humanly understandable. I think this was also another highlight. One last thing in that use case or that project and that case study is for the affective part of it, where when the engineers would reject a specific recommendation from the system. So the system would say, we will need to update this software and turn down that software. And the engineer have an accept or reject option, basically. We design it in a way that when the user reject, we let them say and write down why they rejected this. It's not only for the fact that we want their feedback to be considered, but also for them to feel that the system is responding. Because if you work with someone and you rejected a recommendation, they say, you will not just say no and they will sit there. They will ask you why, and they would love to know more about it. So kind of to give it a human touch, a conversational touch, that the system is intelligent enough that it's curious to know why you reject this, and it will adapt to your preferences. I think those were like some of the highlights of an actual project that I've been working on. AI is progressing, and it looks like it's going to be here for the coming years, and it's going to be evolving. I think we are in a very critical time of the development of the technology that give us not only an opportunity, but also a responsibility for us as designers to make sure that this technology will not exclude us, that people will not be out of the loop, as they say. If we do a good job in making human-centered AI the norm, this will be the way going forward. And we can capitalize on this by making even laws and more formal regulations. But at least our duty at this part is to make this human-AI relationship smoother. So from the people side to trust AI, and from the machine side to become more trustable and become more human-centered.